Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Profit Minds podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Stephen Kirch, creator of the Profit Minds Growth System, a unique blend of profit growth, productivity acceleration, and building robust business process for scale. In every episode, I interview entrepreneurs and small business owners from around the world with a unique story to tell. You can find the show on YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple and Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and more. Good morning, everyone. Today, my guest is Greg Brooks, CMO and partner at Search Tides. And today, we're going to talk about how AI is transforming the future of commerce. Welcome, Greg.
Hey, what's up, Steve? Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be here. Excited to chat with you. Continue our chat.
Yes. AI is everywhere. And so I'm fascinated to have a conversation with somebody who's in the space. So tell us your story. How did you get to be here and doing what you're doing?
Oh, it's a good question. Believe it or not, I actually started off playing poker professionally. It was something that I did during college, and it was a way to get some extra money to go see my girlfriend at the time that I was in a long distance relationship with. And it kind of just spiraled into this real life video game, which was very in tune with my childhood of playing video games and playing on the computer. And here was this other game on the computer. And that was, yeah, I guess that's one way to lackadaisically talk about gambling, but the other side, hey, I'm just playing, I'm trying to get some treasure. So I think that was really fascinating for me. That started off online, and then I transitioned to doing that in the live world. So I learned a lot about human behavior, which was more so when you're sitting at a table with somebody, what do they think and why? On the computer, it's more so, okay, well, what's the math going on? And a little bit of the psychology too. And then I kind of took those, went into business with my brother, had a couple of classic failed business ventures as I was paying my education in the form of doing and learning. And that kind of took things to the point where I picked up the ability to really function as a marketer and to excel as a marketer. And that led to a transition for me from all different types of marketing to then honing in at some point with just search engine optimization, winding up with Search Tides, which today is also going through an evolution and a change that's very much in how we see and how I see the future of everything shifting, which is kind of like in a world where how people do changes forever. What does that mean? What does that mean in marketing? What does that mean for someone's job or career pathway or growth? And how does it all relate? Hopefully, if we have a good handle on it, how does it all relate to the most human component of all of us, and that deep behavior and psychology on what really drives us and what we crave for?
Yeah, so that is really interesting. The whole bit of psychology, and people are really afraid at some level. People are afraid of AI. And I'm guessing that some of that has to do with our friends in Hollywood and the portrayal of Arnold Schwarzenegger, I'll be back, and
Right.
and iRobot, the movie iRobot, which was not at all faithful to the book. Well, there were a couple of things. There were some characters that were the same, but the whole idea of this generic, or we call the full-blown artificial intelligence, right? Artificial general intelligence, which is not anywhere close to where we are today. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the psychology of AI and what you've learned, because you're obviously a student of that. Where do you see the people reaching for it, or people pushing it away? How does that
It's a
play
good
in?
question. I think also, in addition to Hollywood, thanks Hollywood. In addition to that, I think thanks saber-toothed tigers too. Like when we were cave people, we didn't want to go outside and get eaten by saber-toothed tigers. So the body has been really focused on staying the same. The mind, the body, they're like, okay, in this moment right now, we're actively not getting eaten by a predator. So,
and that's good.
yeah, should we maybe change it up? I don't think so. Maybe we just keep not getting eaten. So the like biologically and chemically, we really, really don't like change. And the reason why we don't like change is because it creates uncertainty. And then if you layer on top of it all the things that you're saying, Steve, it's like, okay, well, now we have a specific negative association. So we have an inherent association that's bad. And now we can also point to conscious reasons why it's going to be bad, because these robot things are eventually going to just start jumping on our cars and ripping us out of them like we're all Will Smith. So when you add those things up, it creates a lot of resistance around the uncertain future of tomorrow. And you typically have two groups of people when that happens. You have one group of person who runs into the fire, and then you have another group of person who maybe stays on the outside. I think that's what we're seeing with all technology, and I think AI is also absolutely inside that group.
Yeah, I think that's really, and they talk about the bell curve, right? There are the early adopters, and then and the whole thing about crossing the chasm and trying to figure out how to reach to those people who are somewhat reluctant, but eventually will embrace it. But so yeah, you have and you have, of course, the laggards, right? The people that are gonna, and we see that as we do our AI transformation training, as there's always one or two who are just saying, no, I'm not going to do this, right? Even if the boss says you will participate, right? They refuse. But you have those who are really embracing it. And so how is that changing? We can talk a little bit about SEO and in that sense, but how is it changing the way we're interacting with businesses?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that we're kind of, so you basically had these layoffs like 2 years ago that started, and everyone was like, okay, we're recession, layoff. There was enough Wall Street Journal articles where companies could now justify, and missed earnings where companies could justify laying off people. And so that kind of started this big, oh, we'll just kind of make up the difference with AI tools. We'll just kind of assume that people are going to be more productive because of these tools. I think the one positive to come out of that is that it is very much still human centric. So it's kind of what you were talking about, Steve. It's a person who's AI enabled or AI tool enabled, and they're building on top of their body of knowledge. And I'll give you an example of how we do this in search to show you exactly, I can get into brass tacks is exactly what we do for creating pieces of content. So we might say, hey, we want to create a piece of content, could be written, it could be video, whatever it is. Let's go and look at the top 5 pieces of content that exist for that one. Let's bring them all into ChatGPT. Let's then take that and say, what are all the subtopics of these articles that are being discussed? Let's then take, if we're talking about SEO, let's then take something called the helpful content guidelines that Google has provided. Let's actually upload that into ChatGPT and say, hey, we want to make sure that we're doing well abiding by these guidelines. So we want to showcase experience. We want to showcase as a writer or as somebody on camera that we've done this before. Where can we do that in the script? Where can we do that in this article? We want to showcase expertise. We want to showcase that we know what we're talking about and we put in the repetitions. How do we showcase this? And then we can go and do things, we do little tricks like, okay, ChatGPT, remove the fluff from this article. So it's very much a collaborative effort that requires us to know, and us in this case is search sites, but in a broad strokes, it's the person doing. It requires the person doing to know what good and excellent looks like and how they would get there manually. And then if they know that, now all of a sudden with AI tools, you can get there way more quickly and way more proficiently. And I think that's kind of like the headline of the current state of AI tools. You can't shirk knowing what you're doing. You can increase that you can make that process go faster though.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly what we see, and you know, and that's aside from the whole AI hallucination thing, but it really still requires your expertise. So what we tell people as we teach them how to use AI is not going to take your job. AI is going to help you do certain pieces of your job, help you do certain tasks that you have to do uh, more quickly, easier. Um, we like to think of AI in a couple of different ways, and I'd love to get your feelings on this. But it can be, you can treat it like a really patient intern. So you can ask it to do something, you can ask it to do the same thing 17 times. It will never complain. It will just do it and you know, over and over and over again. The other way we use AI is as a thought partner, and I think that's the way you're talking about it here,
Mm,
right? It's looking at a problem in a lot of different ways that we wouldn't necessarily think of just because we have our own set of blinders. And so it
yeah.
opens up more possibilities.
If you were to say what's the hardest part of any project, doesn't matter what it is, I think what would typically come back from folks is they would say it's the first part, going from 0 to 1. It's looking at that blank piece of paper and just being like, dang. And AI, or at least the GPT models, pretty much eliminate that. And so you can even get to something that you're like, wow, this is absolutely garbage. But now all of a sudden you know where it's garbage, you know why it's garbage there, and you know what to do to it to make a change. So the fact that you can just jumpstart that initial blank piece of paper, to me, is a massive, massive. And then there's a skill gap. I do think that AI is absolutely replacing people's jobs, but I'll say two caveats. Number one, the AI that is doing that is, there's two types of AI. One type of AI, which is what everybody thinks of, is basically Chat GPT, where it's like doing this thinking and it's doing this decision making or whatever. The other type of AI, which is the type that is, it's mostly used for today, if you go across the spectrum, it's mostly used for, and folks kind of forget, is literally just stitching things together. And if people know, like, what is that one website called? But there used to be like an ifttt.com. It was like, if this, then that, if this, or Zapier with zaps and stuff like that. Like, you're like, okay, if this thing happens on this website, do this other thing on this other website. If this tweet comes up, send this thing over here. That's actually the primary use case for AI. It's just stitching together disconnected things. That totally is going to replace people. If you are using AI yourself, it's that first component. It's like to supercharge your own knowledge set. And so the folks that you're talking with, they fall into that first category, where it's like, if you're the one using the tools, it's about your output changing, not
Right.
being replaced.
It's and if you're going to lose your job, you're likely to lose your job to somebody who uses AI
That is
or more effectively uses AI.
That's the truth. So that's the ugly truth, where like companies, we were talking earlier about 2 years ago, we just started these layoffs, and that kind of like, those jobs didn't come back. They're not going to come back. And companies from now on are not going to scale at the same rate with people that they used to in the past. So you're going to start to see companies growing revenue and not adding people. And that's like that's not how you do it historically. You grow, you need more people to do things. And companies have been, and I see this in all the companies that I'm involved with, like, that's the goal. The new goal is like, how do you add to revenue or profit without growing people? And the answer is literally by creating an AI enabled workforce.
Yeah, I'd like to poke at that a little bit, because when we do this, the training that we do, what we tell the leaders is that they have three choices of things that they can do. If, for example, we train the entire workforce and they all get twice as effective, and that's typically what we see, is it takes about half the time to do the thing as it used to, right? Plus or minus, maybe 40 to 60%. So if everybody is on average twice as effective, they can do their job in half the time. You have three choices. You can fire half of them, right? That does horrible things to morale, not only to the people that lose their jobs, but to the people who are remaining, right?
Right.
So you can do that. It's not recommended, but you can do it. The second thing is you can get twice as much out of the people that you have, right? Of the same kind of work. And of course, that will help grow, right? As you say, you can grow now your revenues without growing your staff, right? The third option, and this is actually where I think if companies are smart in the way they use AI, the third option is to let those people, they take the 50% and they still do the same amount of stuff that they've been doing. And the other 50%, they move to the next level. And that's where you'll see accelerated growth from those companies that are really leveraging, because there are a couple of things that happen to the people that do that, right? One is they like that opportunity to move to the next level. They have always so many more things on their list of things to do, right? Then they have time to do it, right? And the boss usually has some stuff that they'd like those people to do, and they already know the company. So think about the acceleration there. What do you think about that, and how companies could use that kind of approach to AI to accelerate growth?
There's this old, I think it's a John Rockefeller quote where and I'm paraphrasing it because I don't even know 100% that this is the dude who said it, but he basically, paraphrasing it, says, I want all of my managers to have basically all of their day-to-day outsourced. I want to get them so that they can spend their day putting their feet up on their desks, thinking about how to make the company more money. And obviously, John Rockefeller was like viciously capitalistic. Obviously, not everyone has desks and or feet, so we wouldn't even say that today. But the point still remains, like, if you can get a certain type of work off of someone's plate and enable them to do a different type of work, that's really where you're going to get the disproportionate gains from. And that's exactly what you're talking about in your third option, Steve.
Yeah. Yeah. So how do you then talk to employees who are afraid of all of this? How do you um, how do you deal with that? Or companies that are afraid, leaders that
I
are
think
afraid?
well, okay, well, now those are three different questions.
Yes, they are.
The first two are easier to do. People internally as a company to a person, it's all about creating the culture of safety. We're just like, we are encouraging you to do this. So if you remember when ChatGPT came out, it was kind of like taboo. It was like, am I using this and I'm hiding it? And we were just like, hey, all, we want you to use these tools. In fact, if you want the pro version of these tools, please tell us so that we can purchase it for you. We want everyone to experiment and play with these tools. Then we had people come in. We have people who come in like every month and do talks on all different types of stuff. So we had then somebody come in on like GPT models and doing talks about it. So I think in terms of how you have the conversations to people and how a company should have a conversation, it's all about, the first part of that is all about like vocalizing a cultural shift. The second reality is there is going to be some headcount trimming if you're going from 0% to 100% of people in a department or org using that. That's okay if there's always people who are like slacking off, who are bringing morale down for others inside of a company. So if you can use this as an opportunity to identify them, that actually creates a more positive work environment for everybody else, because they're just like, oh, Joe Schmo over here just slacks off and I don't, and now I'm being asked to learn this whole new set of things, and I am, and then this person's kind of like, not really taking it seriously, whatever. And then you're like, nope, this is the reward is, your time. I think then, Steve, with your thing too, you have more freed up time. So if it takes me half the amount of time, I wouldn't try to replace 100% of that new time, I might try to replace like 0 to 75% of that new time, depending on the role. So there's now a reward system, which is like, by adopting this, I am actually now working less and I'm outputting more, which is really what a company should care about. If leaders are tough. I think you just get to be mean and straightforward and direct to leaders. And you're just like, this is real simple. History is it's full of dead bodies who didn't adopt new technology. So you can choose your own pathway in that. You can choose your own fate.
So talk to me more about what you do and how AI is impacting the way you help companies get found, the SEO thing, which you touched on a little bit, and how it is that you're really implementing AI in new ways. Are you teaching people how to do this, or you do it for them? What's your model?
At Searchrise, we're just offering up a bunch of services, or a handful of very intentional services that we feel have the best disproportionate positive impact on a company, depending on where they are. And so sometimes that might be SEO. If you're getting lots of organic traffic, you're going to be able to get a lot more organic traffic pretty quickly. If you're not, it's a really long ride up that you might not want to take in in this moment in time. Um, if you're running paid, your biggest opportunity is through different optimizations. But everything in marketing is really about an algorithm, and it's about deconstructing an algorithm. So I think the way that we utilize AI, in addition to providing services, it's understanding the platforms that we play on and understanding how they dictate. So on Google, it's okay, what's the we've crawled tens of millions of search results pages, us and other groups, and we've broken down Google into ranking factors. So like, this is literally what weights for different keywords, this is what makes you appear higher than somebody else. And we can do that because we've deconstructed the AI essentially. On a platform like Meta or Instagram, we're like, okay, this is how the auction works. So the way that you see ads on Meta, on Instagram, it's something called an auction. It's basically a real-time thing that's happening. Sometimes auction's more expensive, sometimes it's less expensive. Sometimes your engagement metrics matter more, sometimes they don't. But you can imagine, by number one, knowing that this data exists, and number two, looking at it every day, you have an advantage over somebody else that's not doing that. And so in terms of how that knowledge of AI comes out in what we do, it's as a result of our just like getting into the robotic weeds of how these systems work, and just understanding like how they weight things, how they are moving towards personalization, how they're moving towards precision to a person, precision to location, and things like that.
So are you doing this dynamically every day? You checking the algorithms and checking for how good the current results are relative to where they could be?
On paid, the auction changes every day. So if you're doing any sort of digital advertising, whether it's on Google Ads, whether it's on Meta, Instagram, TikTok, whatever it is, how the auction is functioning changes every day. So if you are in there looking at your ads every day versus somebody who's not, you will have an advantage. You will actually have like a pretty decent advantage. And especially when you start talking about spending large amounts of money, the more you spend, the harder it is to get a return on that spend. So the more you have to kind of put in effort to get that return. On the Google side of things, a little bit longer term, there's really a handful of algorithm updates that come out every single year, and those have really big changes. The big advantage there is we've historically been able to make changes with clients within 30 days of an algorithm update, knowing exactly what we needed to do, and it taking the rest of the space like a year to even understand what happened. So we have like a pretty massive advantage there as well.
And given that the algorithm changes every year, if it takes you a year to react to it, you're always behind the curve.
It's a death spiral. That's a really insightful, because the rate that we do it is hard enough. It's literally the rate that we do it. It's literally hard enough. I can't imagine what it would look like doing it like a lot slower than that.
Yeah. Yeah. So if somebody is not doing paid, but not really paying attention to SEO, what's the fix? Is there a fix? You said it takes a long time to get the organic to go. What does that timeline look like? And are there things that we can do with AI to make that happen better, faster?
I think that all marketing leaders and departments basically, they need to understand that there's going to be, you basically have businesses of two sizes. You have a business of a size where once you've reached a certain threshold, you're doing everything in every channel because you're just that big. So that's very straightforward. The answer is you'll have people working at the company who have role specific titles that are just for, specific channels. Everybody else needs to make a decision about what to put their time and effort on. And as soon as you are in that group, which is the majority of businesses, it's almost all of them actually.
Yeah.
Now the question is, okay, what are you doing? What's your company structure look like? How do you want to grow? What's your team look like? So I'll throw out some rules of thumb. Typically, if you're in e-commerce, you want to be able to use the paid advertising, what I call like cycle of the internet. A lot of the internet is made to basically create advertise on social media advertising, which leads to effectively impulse purchases. So if you're an e-com company and you can get your average cart value to like $60 or more, you should be spending a ton of time on paid ads. So you should be going like, if you don't have that figured out and your average cart value is over $60, that's a problem for you. Like that should be like a foundational marketing channel for you at that level because you can support it. If your average cart value is like less than $30, you might have a different business model. But if it's like in between 30 and 60, you need to figure out how to get to 60 so you can do paid ads. So that's kind of like one side of it. The organic side we were talking about, if you're already getting good traffic organically, you're already like winning in that channel, you should be quintupling down on it because that's a huge quick way to $1 for you because there's a really long answer and the really short answer is you're already there because it's already working for you. And so you should do more of it. If you have like 1,000 or more conversions on your website in a given month, you should 1,000% be investing in conversion rate optimization. 500 to 1,000 conversions as a rule of thumb, you can change your revenue by like 10, 20% in 6 months just through conversion rate optimization from a good provider. And that doesn't matter if you have like 50 million in revenue or 200 million in revenue. Like it's the numbers are the same for that. So all of those are examples of companies that are not everywhere, everything all at once. And so they still need to make decisions. And that's how like we encourage people to make decisions. It's like, which one of those resonates with you? Which one of those sounds like you? That's really where you should be playing and hanging out. And then you should make sure that your solution is AI enabled, because if it's not, you're basically just going up against all of those are zero sum. So you win, someone else loses. So you are competing against other people. And therefore, if your solution isn't top of line, your competitors will have an advantage over you. So that's really where the AI enablement comes in the solution itself, as opposed to the diagnosis of the opportunity.
Wow. Yeah. So just one final question. And that is, what's the biggest mistake that you see for companies that are, let's say, we'll ask for companies that embrace AI, what's the biggest mistake that they make?
That it somehow replaces the knowledge. You're just like, I'm embracing AI and therefore I don't have to know how to do X. I don't have to know how to do Y. When in actuality, it's the opposite. We're entering into an era, which ironically at Search Times we call the human era. It's marked by 99 point. I promise there's a payoff. Yeah. It's marked by 99.9% of the content on the internet is going to be AI generated, whether video or whether content. And so our understanding is that, well, what will people gravitate towards? They'll gravitate towards the human part of it. Same thing when, factories started putting things out, all of a sudden, hand created furniture artistry started becoming more valued. So I think we're going to see the same thing on the content side of things. And so the big mistakes that people would make would be around doing things that prevent them from being in that very exclusive group. And instead, they wind up unintentionally phoning it in, and they go into this giant cesspool that's like mediocre or maybe even slightly above mediocre content on the internet. And it has a worthlessness to it.
Yeah, that's really insightful. Using AI not to give you an answer, but to give you some ideas as a thought partner. I think you really hit the nail on the head, Greg. Thank you. If somebody wants to get in touch with you, wants to talk more about this or explore more what's going on with Search Tides, what's the best way to reach out?
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to shell, Stephen. So you can searchtides.com. We have a newsletter. We talk about stuff like this. We're on YouTube at Search Tides. We're on LinkedIn at Search Tides. I'm on LinkedIn at, I believe, Gregory B. Brooks. Feels like I should change that, but that's what it is right now.
We'll put it all in the show notes.
Thank you. Yeah. Other than that, just like flip a bat signal into the air. People from Search Tides have been trained to be able to identify that. We have. But no, I think the big message that I want to say to folks is AI is important. It is also scary. It is also overhyped in the short term. And it is also the biggest positive opportunity that humanity has in the future. And it is also a potential for the other side of that too. And I think all of these things can be true at the same time, and that's okay. And so I think people tend to shy away from it because they only look at like one of those things that really resonates with them. And they're like, I'm into it, or they're like, I'm not into it. And I would just offer a little bit more discernment in how you think about things in general and put AI in that category.
Thanks. And that concludes our show. Thanks so much to my guest, Greg Brooks, CMO and partner at Search Tides. I hope you learned something about the transformation that AI is bringing to commerce. I know I did. Thanks for listening. You've been listening to the Profit Minds podcast. This is your host, Dr. Stephen Kirch. Please visit www.profitminds.net for other episodes or to contact me. Thank you for your positive feedback, comments, questions, and for sharing this show with others. Thanks for listening. Have a grateful day.